Live from New Delhi, you're watching DDI Global. We'll get you top stories from India and the region. I'm Tanvi Taneja. And for news from the rest of the world, I'm joined by my colleague in Washington, D.C., Caroline Malone. Hi, Caroline.
Hi there, Tanvi. Well, it's 10 a.m. here in Washington, D.C. and 3 in the afternoon across Central Europe. Coming up in the next few moments, we'll hear more from the Republican National Convention here in the United States, just a few days after the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. But first, the headlines.
Russia and Ukraine exchange 95 prisoners of war each in the latest swap after the United Arab Emirates act as an intermediary. Republicans Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis endorsed Donald Trump's candidacy in a call for unity at the party convention on Tuesday. J.D. Vance takes the stage in Milwaukee today. King Charles III sets out new Labour government's priorities at the state opening speech of Parliament in London, focuses on reviving the economy and tackling housing issues. And India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar and Mauritius Prime Minister Pravin Kumar Jugnauth jointly inaugurate a Medi-clinic in Grand Bois. So Russia and Ukraine have exchanged 95 prisoners of war each on Wednesday in the latest swap after the United Arab Emirates acted as an intermediary. Russia's defense ministry said that the returning Russian soldiers would be flown to Moscow for medical examinations, adding that the freed troops had faced mortal danger in Ukrainian captivity. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that the freed Ukrainian prisoners were members of the Ukrainian armed forces. The prisoner exchange is the third of its kind in the past 7 weeks. So DD India's Megumi Lim joins us from Kiev on the story now. Hi, Megumi. Zelensky has thanked the United Arab Emirates for its help in facilitating the prisoner swap. If you could tell us a bit more on the role UAE is playing here as a mediator?
Well, unfortunately, there's not a lot that we know exactly in terms of the process involved with UAE, the UAE mediating between Russia and Ukraine and brokering these prisoner swaps. There's a lot of secrecy that surrounds this process. What we do know is that today was the 54th prisoner swap that took place between Russia and Ukraine since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion. But this was the 6th to take place under UAE mediation this year. This would bring the number of prisoners that were swapped under UAE mediation to about 1,400. Now, this is quite a high number and also reflects how instrumental the UAE has been in facilitating these prisoner swaps, and we do believe that they will continue to help broker these prisoner exchanges. Now, President Zelensky did say today that most of these Ukrainian prisoners of war that were released today were members of the armed forces, the National Guard, and also the Border Guard Service, and many of them were also took part in the defense of Mariupol in 2022. This is the southern port city of Ukraine that is now under Russian occupation. And as we saw in the videos and photos that were published today, and as with many prisoner swaps that we have seen, Ukrainian prisoners of war released getting off a bus that transported them to the Ukrainian side, being greeted by officials and being cloaked in the colors blue and yellow, many of them colors of the Ukrainian flag, and many of them looked pretty emaciated, tired, exhausted, but of course a look of relief on their faces. Now, we believe that, and according to the UN High Commissioner reports, we believe that many of them have undergone systematic and widespread abuse at Russian hands when they were in Russian captivity. This is why President Zelensky has been calling for an all-for-all prisoner swap between Russia and Ukraine. This is something that came up at the peace summit last month in Switzerland.
Okay, if this is a signal to go by, Megumi, what are the steps the two sides are taking towards a possible ceasefire and restoring peace?
Well, right now we don't see a sort of any willingness from the Ukrainian side to talk about a ceasefire, but we are specifically seeing a shift in Ukrainian sentiment in terms of beginning some kind of peace talks with Russia. A recent poll showed that 44% of Ukrainian respondents said that they are willing to take steps towards some kind of peace talks with Russia. However, a majority of people are still opposed to, of course, ceding any territory to Russia. And right now, quite a huge portion of Ukraine is still under Russian occupation. And on the Russian side, the Kremlin has made clear that it wants to capture fully the 4 regions that it annexed in September of last year, the regions of Kherson, Donetsk, Luhansk and Zaporizhia, but this is something that Ukrainians are still not willing to cede to the Russian side, and so it is unclear how any kind of peace talks are possible if this is something that both sides are not willing to agree on. But President Zelensky again did say that he is planning a second peace summit, and he's hoping to invite Russian representatives to this peace summit this time round.
This one being in November. Thank you, Megumi, for those updates. Thank you very much. On to the US now. Former rivals skeptical of Donald Trump are now endorsing his candidature wholeheartedly at the Republican Party convention underway at Milwaukee, Wisconsin. In a show of unity, Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis, J.D. Vance are supporting Donald Trump. So let's get more on day 3 of the Republican Party convention from my colleague Caroline Malone. She is stationed in Washington, D.C. She gives us more on day 3 of the proceedings and also other stories making headlines around the world. Caroline, so Vance is poised to blow the trumpet, if I may say.
Well, hi there, Tanvi. Well, J.D. Vance is set to give his first speech since he was named Donald Trump's vice presidential running mate. And he's due to give that speech on the 3rd day of the Republican National Convention. Trump and Vance have each attended parts of the convention, but neither of them has yet given an official speech. Today's RNC theme is Make America Strong Once Again, with a focus on military and foreign policy. Well, all of this is happening just after the failed assassination attempt on Donald Trump. A media report also claims that the US received intelligence about an Iranian plot to assassinate the former president, Donald Trump. The Secret Service increased security for Trump given that threat, and there is no known connection to the actual shooting. The White House has said there are no indications that the 20-year-old suspect had any foreign or domestic accomplices. Meanwhile, Iran's mission to the United Nations in New York said those accusations are unsubstantiated and malicious. US officials have for years worried that Tehran would retaliate against Trump for his ordering of the January 2020 killing of Iranian military commander Qasem Soleimani. Well, EU Parliament President Roberta Metsola said the organising body will again discuss how the institution will engage with Hungary while it holds the EU's rotating presidency. This follows criticism of Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban's recent visits to Russia and China on a self-styled peace mission to end the conflict in Ukraine.
Showed with a strong parliament we can do great things. You can only succeed in this parliament if you build bridges, if you create alliances. And that is what I sought to do as from the very first day. I was elected 2.5 years ago, and it is one that I have pledged to do during this latest campaign for me to be re-elected. It is one where I think we can create the best majorities, which is a pro-European platform for the future.
Well, the European Parliament has sharply criticised Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban for his recent meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow. Orban has faced censure from other EU countries and leaders for his recent trips that went without EU endorsement. A European Parliament resolution says Orban's visit to Russia was a, quote, blatant violation of the EU's treaties and common foreign policy, and called for consequences for Hungary. The resolution reaffirmed the Parliament's support for Ukraine and urged Hungary to end its blockade on reimbursing EU member states for military aid to Kyiv. Well, DD India's Alex Cadier joins us live now from Brussels for more. Alex, thanks for joining us. What can we read into these latest developments, particularly about the far right's influence in the European Parliament?
Yeah, well, Caroline, that was one of the big questions ahead of this vote, is whether or not the far right would be able to mobilise as in a united front, perhaps not to block this resolution, but at least to have a show of opposition, a show of force among their ranks. That doesn't seem to have been the case. Quite a large majority of 495 lawmakers of those who voted, that was 679 voted, 495 voted in favour of this resolution. That was clearly a message that the governing coalition of the centre-right, centre-left and centrist parties have a strong majority when it comes to support for Ukraine, and therefore criticising Viktor Orban. We heard the leader of the Socialists saying that Viktor Orban met with President Putin to denigrate the EU, to proclaim that he has a peace plan that nobody knows about, and to promote Russian expansionism. The Hungarian foreign minister hitting back, saying it's unacceptable to stigmatise a country for advocating diplomatic solutions. That was in a statement just yesterday. Clearly, there is a will in the European Parliament to make sure Hungary is held to account, as they see it, for breaking ranks with the European position, a common position agreed by those 27 member states and by the European Parliament. At the moment, this resolution may have passed, but Hungary remains on a clear collision course with a majority of the European Parliament and a majority of the European member states. Caroline.
So a collision course there, Alex, but is this move actually likely to change the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban's position?
Well, it doesn't seem likely to. He has been holding these positions, these slightly contrarian positions, for years within the European Union. He has been a thorn in the side of the more centrist or progressive leaders, member states, MEPs, and particularly when it comes to the issue of Ukraine. He is adopting a more multipolar approach when it comes to Russia, something that, considering the invasion of Ukraine, other European member states find unacceptable. Brokering any kind of peace which would involve Ukraine having to cede its own sovereign territory to Russia is something most European member states and members of the European Parliament see as unacceptable. Nevertheless, we're seeing in some of the messages, not by Viktor Orban himself today, but by Hungarian MEPs, by spokespeople for his Fidesz party, including his political director, making it clear that their opposition to Viktor Orban's position is one of opposition to the voters who elected far-right MEPs in their droves at the last election. Viktor Orban staying the course, that course, a collision with a lot of other European leaders.
Thank you, Alex. That was Alex Cadier live from Brussels. Well, on to the UK now, and King Charles III delivered a speech on Wednesday to mark the opening of the new UK Parliament. It marks the official start of the new Labour government's time in office. In his speech, the King said that securing economic growth is a fundamental mission for the government.
Stability will be the cornerstone of my government's economic policy, and every decision will be consistent with its fiscal rules. It will legislate to ensure that all significant tax and spending changes are subject to an independent assessment by the Office for Budget Responsibility. Bills will be brought forward to strengthen audit and corporate governance alongside pension investment.
Well, on Ukraine, the King said that his government will continue to give its full support to Kyiv.
My government will continue to give its full support to Ukraine and its people, and it will endeavour to play a leading role in providing Ukraine with a clear path to NATO membership. My government will play its part in trying to secure long-term peace and security in the Middle East.
Well, on to Israel now, and firefighters and security forces work to extinguish fires that erupted following a nighttime barrage of rocket fire launched from Lebanon towards towns and cities along Israel's border. Residential buildings within the city sustained damage. According to an Israeli army spokesperson, more than 20 projectiles were detected crossing from Lebanon into various areas of Israel overnight, with some being intercepted. It also said that the Israel military had carried out strikes on targets in Lebanon. French Prime Minister Gabriel Attal and his government resigned on Tuesday, but he will stay on in a caretaker role until a new cabinet is appointed. Experts say the caretaker government will run current affairs in the Eurozone's second largest economy, but cannot submit new laws to Parliament or make any major changes. Its role, however, will include making sure that the Olympics, that starts on July 26th, run smoothly. Well, a US startup is addressing the escalating problem of space debris with an AI-powered tracking system designed to alert satellite operators of potential collisions. Privateer, co-founded by Apple's Steve Wozniak and based in Hawaii, emphasizes the growing need to track, record, and monitor the vast amounts of space junk as more satellites are launched into orbit. Their platform, Wayfinder, is currently monitoring over 35,000 objects in orbit. The startup aims to provide its tracking data to satellite operators, international space agencies, and the global scientific community. Well, that's it from me here in Washington. Back to you in the studio, Tanvi.
Thank you, Caroline. Caroline Malone joining us all from Washington, D.C. on DD India Global. Still to come on the show. India calls for urgent reforms of the United Nations Security Council to address global challenges. The ambassador says the current vintage multilateral system has failed due to its binary model. Taiwan is willing to take more responsibility for defending itself, says its premier, after Donald Trump told a US daily that Taiwan does not give US anything in return for protecting them.
While there's still enough food for everyone on the planet, food shortages are a real problem. Let's take a look at the factors causing this and what can be done to save our food.
What we host now, it's called Farm School. One of the goals is to teach them agriculture so that 50 years from now, when there's so much change in climate, they don't have to deal with learning two new skills.
We empower women who are really poor and who don't have too much economic empowerment to eat better.
We adopt this strategy in our product. The volatile compounds induce the defence mechanism and help to prolong shelf life by 2 more days, so it's purely natural.
Thank you for staying with us. You're watching DD India Global. I am Tanvi Taneja. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has hailed the phenomenal success of the Make in India initiative, underscoring its role in propelling India's economy onto the global stage. DD India's Tripti Tripathi gets us more.
India has emerged as a prominent player in the global economic landscape, captivating the attention of investors. The nation is also making important contributions beyond its borders with its strong economic position. Increasing exports and a robust manufacturing sector have been key priorities of the Indian government. The nation is realizing this dream with Make in India initiative that can add to the engines of global growth. Lauding this initiative, Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Thursday said that Make in India is propelling India's economy on the international stage. A report shared by MyGov India showed the global demand for Made in India bicycles, with exports surging to the UK, Germany and the Netherlands. Made in Bihar boots are now part of the Russian Army's gear, reflecting India's growing influence on international defense markets. There is also high demand for Kashmir willow bats and launch of products by India's first cooperative society, Amul, in the United States. India's UPI system, that is now a global phenomenon, enables seamless digital payments in multiple countries. India's economy is expanding at the fastest rate among major emerging economies. International Monetary Fund revised India's GDP growth forecast for the fiscal year 2024-25 to 7% despite geopolitical tensions in Europe and West Asia. Citing rebound in agriculture with above normal monsoon projections, Asian Development Bank maintained India's GDP growth forecast at 7.3% for the current financial year. As per the latest report from Boston Consulting Group, the Asian region is likely to contribute nearly 30% of the new financial wealth by 2028. India will add about $730 billion annually to the overall growth in the region through 2028. In 2023, India generated roughly $590 billion in new financial wealth, marking its largest increase in history. The report also says generative AI will play a crucial role in the digital transformation of wealth managers, with use cases along the entire value chain. Exports have also shown resilience amid global challenges in the first quarter. India's merchandise grew by 5.8%. Services exports exhibited a strong performance in June, contributing positively to the overall trade scenario. India has undergone a journey from fragility to stability and strength during the last 10 years. Tripti Tripaঠি's report, DD India.
Next, an update on deepening ties over India and Mauritius. During his two-day visit to Mauritius, India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar addressed the inauguration ceremony of the Mediclinic project at Grand Bois in the Savon district of Mauritius. The minister said that the facility will provide treatment to thousands of people.
This family has gathered here for a very important event, which is the opening of the Mediclinic. I think it was described as the newest expression of our friendship. And I'm told it will provide secondary health care for 16,000 people of Grand Bois area. And we feel very proud to be a partner in this collaboration.
India has once again called for the much-needed reforms at the United Nations, starting with the United Nations Security Council. Delivering India's statement at the UNSC open debate on multilateral cooperation in the interest of a more just, democratic and sustainable world order, Chargé d'Affaires Ambassador R. Ravindra said that multipolarity is being witnessed in the world is here to stay.
Multipolarity, as we are witnessing it now, is here to stay. The primary reason the multilateral system has failed to deliver is that it is still stuck in a 1945 vintage binary outlook reflected clearly in the composition of this Security Council. The core of India's position on reformed multilateralism, therefore, lies in a call for the reform of the UN Security Council that is reflective of contemporary realities of today. For multilateral cooperation to deliver, it must emanate from a representation of developing countries in all major decision-making bodies, especially in the peace and security architecture. As we convene for the Summit of the Future, let us recommit to time-bound negotiations on UNSC reforms. The multilateral system cannot deliver without the sustained commitment of major powers and groups to global institutions and a rules-based order. And in this context, it is important that all must adhere to the basic building block of international cooperation, which is good faith negotiations. Sabotaging of negotiating processes and mechanisms by big countries or groups in the narrow interest of their own positions is detrimental to the multilateral spirit and must be called out wherever necessary.
More from Asia. Taiwan's ruling party said on Wednesday that former US President Donald Trump's comments were nothing more than hoping that Taiwan would show the same determination to protect its security as other countries. It further added that China is the biggest threat to the United States. This is the consensus of the Democratic and Republican parties. Party's Secretary General Lin Yu Chang said that now is the best era for Taiwan-US relations to prosper. And from seas and deserts to dates and olives, An Egyptian board game called Arde, meaning My Land, is teaching children about Arab countries and their resources. The goal of the game is to teach children about their identity. Take a look.
فسيمو جايب اول كارت.
اوكي. ده ايه جبل؟ That's all for this edition of DD India Global. To let us know your thoughts on the news of the day, connect with us on our different social media handles at DD India Live. And for those on the go, you can catch all the latest news and updates on our DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. So we will be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Tanvi Taneja. From all of us here in New Delhi, thank you for watching. Namaskar.